After Za'Darius Smith officially retired from the Philadelphia Eagles today, it's now official that the Eagles have an edge rusher emergency, and Howie Roseman has to step up to the plate.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcoming Eagles fans to this Monday edition of the show. It's brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase, and speaking of moves, there's got to be one that comes at the edge rusher position because Za'Darius Smith officially retired today. Nolan Smith is still on injured reserve. Jalyx Hunt has not stepped up to the plate as a top 2 edge rusher in this rotation. I feel like you've been getting pretty solid reps from Josh Uche this year. His pass rush win rate is really good, but not really generating sacks. Doesn't have one on the year yet. Azeez Ojulari, a solid 4th guy in a rotation, but nothing more. Nothing less either, but certainly nothing more. They have to do something. Howie Roseman has to call up another football team and add a pass rusher on the edge because Za'Darius Smith, it is crazy that an in-season signing had such a significant role, but Za'Darius Smith, I think personally, was a top 2 consistent pass rusher on the edge for you the last few games. It was him and Josh Uche. And with Smith officially retiring today, they've got to do something because Jalyx Hunt, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that while I think he will get better as the year goes on, and look, Nolan Smith started off slow last year as well in his second season. He didn't really break out until the Eagles' 5th or 6th game. Like it was after the bye week that Nolan really took off. And I still think Jalyx Hunt is going to get better and better. I love his physical traits. I do think he can be eventually a top 2 player in this rotation. But right now, I do think the Eagles put too much on his shoulders. I think it was premature to believe. And again, he had a really good playoff run, and so I understand why they wanted to give him a chance, and I understand why you let Josh Sweat go and didn't want to give him that money, even though he's balling out in Arizona right now. So I understood all that, but Jalyx clearly was not ready to shoulder the load as a top 2 guy, let alone right now with Za'Darius Smith retiring and Nolan Smith on IR, at least for a couple more weeks, he's going to be out. He's not going to play in this Minnesota game, will not play against the Giants. Likely will be back for that November run with Green Bay coming up and Detroit and all those tough games. Right now, Jalyx Hunt is like your number 1 guy. And yes, the Eagles badly need him to be better and more consistent as a pass rusher. I think at the same time, it is naive. I think it is irresponsible to expect that Jalyx can carry even more. When Nolan Smith went down, Hunt wasn't a top 2 consistent pass rusher on this defensive line. On the edge, I think Uche and Za'Darius Smith have been more effective. So Jalyx in the long term, I still believe, but right now, to expect him to shoulder the load without Smith, without Sweat, I guess, yeah. 2 Smiths, actually. That's why I got tripped up there. Za'Darius and Nolan, without those 2 guys, without Josh Sweat, without Brandon Graham, I don't know. Like, yes, they really need more from him right now. But I think it's a little bit unfair to expect him to suddenly just be the go-to guy. So Jalyx has to be better. They need more from Josh Uche. He needs to turn those pressures, those wins into sacks. And Azeez Ojulari needs to continue to be solid like he's been the last 2 games. But I don't think that's going to be enough. I think Hunt, Uche, Ojulari, and Patrick Johnson, in such a crucial part of the season at 4-2, you've dropped 2 straight games. I'm not settling with that. And can they get by until Nolan Smith comes back in a few weeks? Maybe. But when you look at the NFL landscape and some of the teams that are losing football games right now, there is a lot of edge rusher help that you could bring in to replace Za'Darius Smith, to fill in until Nolan Smith comes back healthy, to help Jalyx Hunt shoulder the load, because Jalyx, again, they need more, but he's not ready for this. Like, I don't think he's ready for the role that he's being forced into right now. So for me, considering the Miami Dolphins lost, the New Orleans Saints lost, the Cincinnati Bengals are now, 2-4? They've dropped 4 games in a row. They had to trade for Joe Flacco, and they play the Pittsburgh Steelers this Thursday night. They could lose again and drop to 2-5. I'm calling up one of those teams before the trade deadline. And I'm not waiting for the deadline. Like, I'm probably doing that today. The minute Howie Roseman was informed that Za'Darius Smith was retiring, he should have been calling, and maybe he is. He should be calling up these other teams. Like, the Miami Dolphins have Bradley Chubb, 4 sacks this year. Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, in the offseason, I didn't feel like that trade was very realistic because with a massive new contract extension. But because he did rework his Bengals deal into a 1-year contract, because now he is playing this season, you could trade for him as a rental just for 1 year. And the Bengals likely will be okay with getting a pick for Hendrickson since they aren't going to pay him. And they're kind of dead in the water. Trey Hendrickson has 4 sacks this year. Suddenly, that move for Trey makes a lot of sense. Now you're not going to have to give up a first-round pick and $40 million a year. Cam Jordan for the New Orleans Saints, like, yeah, the guy's 36 years old, and is he a long-term fix at this position? No, but I liked the idea of having a bigger edge rusher, a more traditional 4-3 defensive end style of player that's good against the run, that's still effective getting to the quarterback, that can be a veteran voice in a very young room. That's why I really liked the Za'Darius Smith signing, and I thought he was playing really well the last month. As I said, when Nolan Smith went down, Za'Darius Smith was a top 2 efficient pass rusher in this edge rotation. I thought he was better than Jalyx Hunt, and I thought in a couple of those games he was better than Josh Uche as well. So Cam Jordan would also make sense in that kind of role as well, rotating as that 3rd or 4th guy. I think they have to do something like that because the Eagles are 4-2. They play right now not a super tough schedule in the next couple of weeks, Minnesota and the Giants, but you just lost to the Giants. You lost to the Denver Broncos. Like, they need these wins to stop the bleeding, especially in a wide open NFC right now. If they want to take back control of this conference, they have to be able to consistently get to the quarterback, especially when you look at the injuries to Jalen Carter, when you look at the injury in the secondary to Quinyon Mitchell. So this defense is kind of bleeding right now, and Howie Roseman has to do something. Like, I think he really needs to help this football team. And it's kind of hard to ask more of Howie because he's done so much already to build this thing up. But the edge rusher group already was very hot and cold. I think they need to turn the pressures that they have had into sacks. And now without Za'Darius Smith and Nolan Smith, they're just going to need more pressures. Like, the pressures have not been consistent enough, and the sacks are just not there. Even when they are consistently getting to the quarterback, they have not been able to finish. So I wanted an edge rusher before. I wasn't dying for it. I thought they could be okay until Nolan Smith came back. But now you lose 2 guys in that rotation. You got to do something. For me, I would say these are the top 3 guys I'm targeting. Bradley Chubb. Obviously, Jalen Phillips is also in Miami, who's an intriguing player, but a younger guy that I think Miami would be willing to get rid of less than Bradley Chubb. Trey Hendrickson makes all the sense in the world right now, and Cam Jordan could be your this year's version of what you did in like 2022 when you brought in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. I think that kind of move could happen. I've seen names like Jermaine Johnson tossed around. I don't know why the Jets would trade away a really good young edge rusher just because they're losing. Like, I don't think they should be in the business of getting rid of the good young players that they do have, although I'd be really intrigued by that in a vacuum. I think those 3 names I mentioned specifically make the most sense. But they got to do something. Za'Darius Smith retiring today did not sound like it had anything to do with the team. So people out there that are, dancing around on the Eagles' supposed grave, the season's not dead at all. It's been such an overreaction theater this week, especially with the national media and fan bases. But that's the reaction right now. And Za'Darius Smith retiring, everybody's saying like, oh, the locker room might be just super toxic and Za'Darius just wanted out of there after a month. I don't think that's the case at all, and it doesn't sound like, per reports from Eagles beat reporters and national insiders as well, that this had anything to do with the Eagles locker room. So definitely don't buy into that. It sounds like Smith just wanted to retire, and there's a reason he was available during the regular season. I think he was probably going back and forth with the future of his career, and it's why he was late to make a decision. And also, I think he probably didn't expect to be needed as much as the Eagles needed him in this rotation. So he hangs up the cleats. Don't think it has anything to do with the locker room, but I do think Howie Roseman needs to add somebody else to this locker room. And my top 3 suggestions, like I said, Bradley Chubb, Trey Hendrickson, or Cam Jordan. They got to bring somebody in until Nolan Smith is back in the fold. All right, guys, coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, could Vic Fangio find a more creative way to create pass rush help? Quinyon Mitchell's injury, Kelee Ringo's up and down play. Could he also look to change roles in the secondary? How do you help stop the bleeding on defense? We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, unfortunately, was Jackson Dart's deep ball to Lil Jordan Humphrey. I mean, that kind of put the game on ice for the New York Giants. The Philadelphia Eagles need reinforcements in the secondary. Kelee Ringo and Dory Jackson certainly were liabilities in that football game. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Guys, today's show is also brought to you by Supply House. Supply House is, look, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use our promo code capital SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people and real service. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. The drama continues in Philadelphia. Za'Darius Smith retires today, so the Eagles definitely need pass rush help with Nolan Smith on IR. They're down to Jalyx Hunt is the number one guy, which again I think is a little unfair to put that kind of pressure and responsibility on still a pretty raw prospect's shoulders. They need more from Jalyx. Like, he has to be better this year. Even when Nolan Smith comes back, they need more out of that kid. But I do think they need to bring in other players. Uche and Ojulari, still solid number 4 guys in a rotation, but Nolan Smith's a 1. Jalyx, I still think, is a 3. Like, that's the thing. I think they have 2 number 3s. They have a number 4 and a number 1. You need that number 2. And they were banking on that being Jalyx Hunt. They were banking on Za'Darius Smith being part of that, and maybe 3 or 4 number 3s in a rotation, if you're following me with all those numbers being tossed around, could do the trick with Nolan Smith as your true number 1. But now with Za'Darius gone, with Nolan's injury, I think you got to bring in somebody. Now, Vic Fangio could get creative. He could say, look, if Howie's not going to bring in somebody big, because there is going to be a lot of competition for these edge rushers that are available. There's a lot of edge rusher needy teams in the league right now, especially in the NFL, in the NFC, I should say. So it's not going to be easy to grab these guys. Now, the Eagles do have the advantage because they have more draft picks than most of these teams. Howie is just more aggressive and more creative and works the phones more than anybody. So I think the Eagles have the best chance to add a player of impact, but let's say they can't do it or they're not going to do it right away. I do wonder, and I wouldn't do it personally, but because Nakobe Dean has been activated to the 53-man roster, I haven't been super impressed with Jihaad Campbell when he's on the edge this year. I feel like he's clearly a better inside linebacker. Like, he's a rookie of the year favorite at inside linebacker. I do wonder, though, if Fangio will use him more on the edge or if they start to use him and Zach Bond. They've been using them as pass rushers a lot, but I do wonder if there's at times you're going to see Nakobe Dean on the interior of this defensive unit playing in the middle with Zach Bond or Jihaad Campbell next to him, and then somebody else, one of those other guys, is down on the edge. Like, I do think that's something that Fangio might have to consider for the time being. Is it ideal for the player this year or long term? Is it maximizing fully their ceiling, their strengths? No. Zach Bond and Jihaad Campbell lined up in the middle is what you want long term for this season and for the future. But I wonder if they do see those guys playing the overhang position a little bit more as a way to stop the bleeding until Nolan comes back, until Howie Roseman does make a trade. I do think they can get by against Minnesota this week because the Vikings have 2 starting offensive linemen that are injured and might not play in this football game. Carson Wentz, if he's the starter, we know in Philadelphia how long he holds on to the football, so maybe they don't need to do anything drastic like this, but I do wonder if Fangio is going to try and get creative like he's been doing already this year. I mean, he has blitzed way more than probably he wants to generate pressure. With Cooper DeJean healthy, though, it does give them some flexibility. Again, Campbell and Bond are not permanent fixes there, and there's a reason both of them change positions from edge rusher, but I do think those guys have a skill set you could potentially use to help generate pressure against Minnesota and then the following week against New York. It's a tough call because the defense is very injured right now, even in the secondary. We'll see what happens if Quinyon Mitchell plays in this game. If he doesn't, do you consider moving Cooper DeJean to the outside? Even if Quinyon plays, Ringo and Adoree Jackson were so alarmingly bad against New York and a very lackluster receiving core. Do you move DeJean anyway to the outside, even if Quinyon's playing? I wouldn't. I think he is far too valuable of a player on the inside in the slot. He wears so many hats that I would still only play him at outside corner in base packages. But if Quinyon doesn't play, what I would do to change up DeJean's role is I would have him kind of do what Q's been doing the last few weeks against top receivers and just have him shadow Justin Jefferson all game, because Justin Jefferson against Kelee Ringo and or Adoree Jackson is not going to go well. So, when we talk about it, I was asked this question before the show. That's why I wanted to address it in segment 2. When it comes to changing Jihaad Campbell's role, changing Zach Bond's, changing Cooper DeJean's long-term, I really don't love that idea. But I do think in this particular case against Minnesota, this matchup, in a specific scenario where Quinyon Mitchell does not play, then yeah, I'm having Cooper not just stand in the slot. I'm having him go wherever Justin Jefferson goes. Wherever number 18 goes, I want number 33 on him. If Quinyon plays, then no, I'm probably not moving DeJean to the boundary. I don't think that's a fix this week or this year for that second outside corner spot. I would much rather have DeJean in the slot in that scenario with Quinyon shadowing Jefferson. For me, the fix for both edge rusher and corner is you just got to bring in more players. I do think that a Bradley Chubb makes sense at edge rusher, and I would call Miami up at corner as well. They had an opportunity to sign him. He was a free agent until about a month ago, but former Eagles corner Rasul Douglas yet again goes to another team and plays really well. Rasul's actually been, according to Pro Football Focus, since he signed and has been a starter for the Miami Dolphins defense, he's been graded out as a top 10 corner in the NFL, and he's been really good against the run this year. He had a huge quarterback hit on Justin Herbert yesterday on a cornerback blitz. I think Rasul, again, he has some of the weaknesses of a Kelee Ringo, but he's a much smarter, more instinctual player and is a better ball hawk in zone coverage than Kelee Ringo is. I think Zul, especially with a too high safety shell, fits Fangio's defense a lot more than Ringo does, even though they're both a little stiff laterally. I think Rasul would make a lot of sense, too, to trade for. Miami only has one win. I would make that move even before maybe bringing in an edge rusher. And look, I was wrong about Ringo, clearly. I don't think he was bad against Tampa and Denver, but the New York game showed, he has too low of a floor, too, to be trusted in big games, down the road when they're in the playoffs. If they're competing for a Super Bowl again this year, I don't even think I trust Ringo now. I certainly did not trust Adoree Jackson or Jacorian Bennett. I wanted them to give Ringo a chance so I could feel satisfied to move on. We've seen that over 3 games. I think the variance is too hot and cold to start him long-term this year and in the future, so I would try to trade for somebody like Rasul Douglas, and maybe you do a package play. Hey, give us Chubb and Rasul, and we'll give you a day 2 pick or, a couple draft picks. They have so many on day 3 in 2026. Maybe that's the kind of move they make. I think that's the better option than asking Fangio to weaken 2 positions in the name of just filling in holes. I think that's where I would go. But against Minnesota specifically, if Quinyon Mitchell is not playing, then I am okay changing Cooper DeJean's role. That is a necessity, because you can't have Cooper just in the slot and Jefferson's moving, just sticking on the outside and dominating Adoree Jackson and Kelee Ringo. Especially in 2, Jordan Addison is a very underrated number 2 receiver in the NFL. So this is a tough matchup. And I think if that's the scenario at play, I'm not moving Jihaad Campbell to the edge. I'm keeping him at inside linebacker. I would play some packages, though, where all 3 linebackers are out there. But I will say Cooper, I'm keeping in the slot if Quinyon Mitchell plays, and I'm trading for a corner. That's my fix more than I think just having DeJean play on the outside. Even though he's good at it, I think the slot is such an important position to be elite at in the NFL now in a modern day defense with the way he tackles, he run fits, the different kinds of weapons that are in there, tight ends, shifty receivers, bigger receivers. He can cover them all. I think he's got to stay in there unless Quinyon's out against Minnesota. And then he should be shadowing Justin Jefferson wherever he goes. I know it feels like the sky is falling, but I do want to put things in perspective. After watching all the Sunday games across the NFL, I still believe the Eagles are the alpha of the NFC, and I'll tell you why as we wrap up this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is in full swing, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down just $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. You can do so many things on FanDuel. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and to get started. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is also brought to you by Mizzen and Main. You know the saying, look good, feel good? Well, the problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp, but feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. That's why there's Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabric, so it's effortless to look sharp and to feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. Their shirts are stretchy, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and machine washable. No ironing, no dry cleaning, which I absolutely love. I get clothes wrinkled all the time, and I refuse to wear them if they're wrinkled. It's the feel of athletic wear, but the look of professional menswear. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N in Maine, MAIN.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. And I know right now, like, the Eagles definitely need some reinforcements on defense. You know, at edge rushers, Za'Darius Smith retires today. Nolan Smith is on injured reserve. Quinyon Mitchell banged up in the secondary. Jalen Carter banged up on the interior of the defensive line. They needed reinforcements against the Giants. They're going to need them against the Minnesota Vikings. They have to add an edge rusher. I think they also should trade for a cornerback. I would love Rasul Douglas. That's the move that I'm really pounding the table for. Bring him back. Rasul fits this defense so much more than he did the Jim Schwartz defense back from 2017 to 2020. The offense, obviously, the run game is in trouble right now. Jalen Hurts and Kevin Patullo have been so inconsistent this season. So there's a lot of work to be done for this Philadelphia Eagles football team. But, you know, Sunday was the first time since week 1 I was able to watch all of the Sunday games across the NFL landscape without having any sort of Eagles lens. Like, where the Eagles game did not skew my perspective. My mood did not change because of the Philadelphia Eagles watching football games on Sunday. And I got to just, you know, unbiasedly just watch the NFC, watch the AFC, watch how these supposed other elite teams are playing in the month of October, early on in an NFL season, looking at so many injuries that a lot of these teams have. Like, the San Francisco 49ers are going through a 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, like that 4-year Eagles run of just catastrophic, historic injuries. San Francisco is going through that right now. Like Fred Warner now out for the year. They've lost pretty much every star core piece of their roster they've had this season. Tampa Bay is pretty banged up. The Eagles proved, even when they're not playing on their A game, that they can go into Tampa Bay and beat the Buccaneers. They did beat the Rams this year, another team that I consider to be one of the best in the NFC. You look at the Detroit Lions. They're good, but yet again on Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs kind of showed us that there's times when they play really good football teams that they can't get it done. And the AFC is just, so hot and cold with everybody. Even the Buffalo Bills lost last week to the New England Patriots. It helped me put things in perspective that, things are not good. And I'm not going to use wins and losses and records and what other teams are dealing with to completely excuse what the Eagles' situation is. They've lost 2 games straight. A lot of it is their fault, based on things that Howie Roseman could have done better to make the defense deeper this year. A lot of it is because of how bad the play calling has been by Kevin Patullo and how Nick Sirianni sometimes is not managing this locker room very well, and Jalen Hurts has been way too inconsistent. He's been terrible in the second half of games. There's some selfishness with players right now, and the run game is so out of sync, and there's injuries. So these are all real, tangible things that the Eagles need to clean up in order to compete for a Super Bowl again in 2025. But they are still 4-2. They're 2 games over 500. They're only 1 game back of the number 1 seed in the NFC. They still have, even though going on the road to play Minnesota is not an easy game, they're still favorites to win that football game. Minnesota has a lot of holes. Then they play the Giants again, this time at Lincoln Financial Field. If they can win those 2 games, you're right back on track at 6-2. I just think that the panic button shouldn't be hit yet. Obviously, we should discuss the issues and how they need to correct them for sure. And my show on Friday was very heated, and I was pissed off, as I should have been, and as we all should have been. And I'm not trying to, I think some people just hide behind a record and say, well, these teams are dealing with this too, so therefore we can ignore all the problems the Eagles have. But I also think people go too far the other way too, and they make it seem like this football team is 2-4. And that's not the case at all. They are 4-2, and they've beaten some really good football teams this year. So I still think they have it in them. And if they can just play a more consistent brand of football on offense, if they can get healthier and Howie can just pull off 1 or 2 more good moves, I do think they're still going to be okay. I still think watching those other teams in the NFC, the second tier of the NFC is really good. This conference is way deeper than the AFC. The playoffs is going to be a gauntlet. It's going to be a battle, just like it was last year. There's going to be some good teams in the NFC that do not make the postseason this year. But at the top, there's no team that I say, oh, they're unbeatable. It's clearly their conference this year. I don't feel that way about anybody. And you've already beaten 2 of those teams. San Francisco, the injuries are beating themselves. I don't know if they're going to be alive at the end of the year at this point. And then you've got the Jekyll and Hyde Green Bay Packers. And then, of course, Detroit is the elephant in the room. We'll see how the Eagles do against them later on in the season. But yeah, I just putting things in perspective, the state of the NFC, it's deep. And there's a lot of good teams, but who's great? Who is clearly still by far a superior football team to the Philadelphia Eagles when the Eagles are not in their own way? And when they start to be more consistent, if they do get more consistent, and if they do get healthier, I still think this roster is the best in the conference. I still think nobody can mess with this team, again, if they're not in their own way. And I hope that they don't embarrass me and go into Minnesota and make me look dumb by just getting boat raced again. And it really does feel like 2023 at the end of the year all over again. But I truly do not believe that's going to be the reality of this football team. It feels bad right now, and Za'Darius retiring today certainly did not help. There's clearly problems on paper that this defense has, and there's a lot of X's and O's issues that the offense has, but I still believe they're going to turn it around. And I think if they can just get this win against Minnesota and get to 5-2, I feel like the whole world on fire approach, point of view, tone around the Eagles right now, I think that'll be put out pretty quick. So they really need this win against the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll start to cover it tomorrow, and we still got 4 more shows for you this week on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast, 2 episodes a week with Tyler the Madman Rowland in the morning and Tony Wiggins, the barber, in the afternoon in the barbershop. So Tyler Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football morning. Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, thank you so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.